You loved this person, you chose them. And somehow, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, you're both standing in the kitchen feeling completely alone. Not because you stopped caring, but because no one taught us how to do this part. Relationships don't fail from lack of love. They fail from lack of language. This episode is about building that language together, so the person you picked actually feels like you picked them every day. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by my wife, Allyson Perry.
Hello.
And this is the New Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the New Ashla Podcast. Today we're diving into healthy relationships and how to create a relationship that flourishes through communication, through understanding, through respect. So me and Allison, we've been together for about 3 years, and it's been an amazing journey. We've really worked hard on our own issues as well as our communication, and it's led to something I never thought existed. And it's something that I wish more people knew how to access, because when you feel safe in your own home, in your own relationship, where you can be yourself, where you can be authentic, and you can have good days, have bad days, and you know your partner's there to help pick up the slack when you need it because you do the same for them. It is magical. 3 years, we've had one maybe argument, and even then we worked right through it within a few days, and yeah, it's amazing what a healthy relationship can do, not just in a relationship, but for who you are as a person. You know, one of my favorite quotes is, "You are who you spend your time with." And I think the partner you pick is one of the most important decisions you can make, because this is the person you're building your life with. So, what would you say about this journey and how it's been for you, as far as compared to what you're used to and what you went through?
Well, compared to what I'm used to. You communicate. You tell me what's going on. You tell me, like, hey, with you, I'm just stuck in my own brain. The gremlins in the back of your brain are going at work. And I appreciate that, because then I don't spend all day going, oh crap, what did I do? Let me review everything I've done over the past, decade that you could possibly be angry about. And it's just reassuring. And also, you hold the space for when I need to say, hey, I'm having a terrible day. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, and just the trust we have when those words are said, how valuable it is to sort of know what's going on. And I think one of the things we're going to touch on in this episode is sort of the anxious avoidant, because a lot of the times with people who are avoidant, they don't really have an answer right away. You ask them a question of what's going on, they don't even know. And so creating that space to allow your partner to figure out what's going on, so you're not trying to rush an answer or a decision on what could be possibly the matter. So I think when we look at a lot of relationships out there, especially ones that are not necessarily healthy relationships, there are a couple roots we can look at that I think drive a lot of the toxicity within these dynamics. One of the first ones I've dealt with, and I've personally been guilty of doing, is expecting my partner to be a mind reader or to know what's going on with me. And this ties back into the communication and being able to talk about what's going on. We're constantly changing. And so being able to relay, hey, I'm having an off day today. Hey, I'm feeling upset about such and such. Or just, you did something I didn't like. Here it is. What can we do about this in the future?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like what you said, because, and I know this is me a lot of the time. I know I'm feeling something. I don't have words for it just yet, but I'm feeling something, because I start with, I'm feeling something in my body somewhere. And I have to take that time to sit with it and find words for it. So I'll tell you, hey, I'm feeling something. I don't know what it is. And sometimes that's, hey, can you help me figure it out? And sometimes that's, and I need to go sit by myself in a corner and figure that out.
Right? Well, I think one of the greatest lines I discovered when we first started dating was, do you need an ear? Do you need a distraction? Or do you need space?
Mm-hmm.
And
I
it's
love
just
that.
like, yeah, it's what need do you need filled right now to help you in your space? What can I offer you right now? And sometimes that is just like, here, I'll leave you alone, I'll let you do your thing, or it's, hey, let's go on a walk or on an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and even laying out, they aren't limiting options. It can be, oh, I need a distraction. Here's what kind of distraction I need. But it gives me a little semblance of structure of here are 3 options that I can choose from
Yeah.
instead of what do you need, which is a vague, open-ended question and can have me sitting there going, I don't know what I need. Sleep?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that people really get stuck on is the silence that comes up in relationships. Because sometimes a lot people don't know how to process what they're going through. Some people are too damn stoic in their own attitudes towards life. And, sometimes that silence where they really need something is being mistaken for strength, or even worse, not caring. I mean, I've dealt with that before where I had to deal with intense silence in a relationship, and it's just like when you don't have you don't have any communication going on. I mean, us as people, we will always point to ourselves being the problem because it's if I can fix myself, then I can fix what's going on outside
You
when you
have
don't
control.
know. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Well, and the silence leaves space for spiraling. It leaves space for your mind to go and just explore the worst of the worst possibilities.
Catastrophize, yeah.
Or, yeah, hey, they're not communicating anything. I guess they don't need anything. Okay.
Well, and it's just like, especially when tension builds in a relationship, when communication goes, when there's a drought of communication in a relationship for so long and things are withering, there's this fine line that appears where what we want to say and what we actually say become two very different things because both parties are on guard. We're looking for the attack. We're constantly trying to see how we're being affronted. I think one of the biggest issues I've dealt with in past relationships, which took me doing a lot of healing work to get to a point where I could have, is knowing that when someone brings a concern up or an issue, it's not a condemnation, it's not a judgment, it's not a criticism. And being in an abusive relationship, sometimes it is very much that, and that's a good gauge to know, should I be in this dynamic? Is this healthy for me? But again, when we go through this drought in our relationships and we try to have that communication, we get so lost in our feelings because we're so activated that we end up having this word stew come out that just doesn't convey the deeper message we're trying to get to. We don't get to the real issue. It ends up becoming a blame game or this self-deprecation of everything else that they're doing wrong just to try to make a point that, again, back to the mind reading.
And I do that a lot when I bring something, noticing a thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's one of the things I love the most about a relationship is how we can just, when we notice something with one another, because we're both actively trying to improve, grow, be better people. And it's just like we can bring stuff up to each other where it's like, hey, I noticed this about you. And it's like, if it doesn't change, that's totally fine with me, but just something I noticed and I'm aware of and wanted to let you know that I see it.
Yeah, just a little bit of feedback, because that's the whole point. We're mirrors to each other, right? We show each other things about ourselves that maybe we wouldn't have noticed because it's normal to us.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when you have that kind of communication in a relationship, you can chew on it. Like, decide, is this something I want to swallow? Is this something I think is factual? Or is just this how I am?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd say it's probably a 50-50 of, you know what, I'm going to work on that. Or, you know what, that sounds about right.
You can even gauge and ask your partner, how much does this bug you actually? If this never changed, how much of a deal breaker would that be?
The more communication, the better.
We communicate too much.
We're always happy. Every day we come home and cuddle. Like,
touche. But also sometimes, you know how I am, but I just need to start speaking because I've felt something and I'm starting to find words, and I just kind of need to word vomit a little bit in order to figure out what I'm actually trying to say. And I appreciate that you hold that space for me. That I say, okay, I'm trying to say something and this first draft isn't going to be perfect. But if I start talking it out, I can kind of verbally process and figure out where I'm getting. And eventually I'll be like, That's the thing that I was getting to.
Yeah, and it's one of the great things when you're not feeling defensive in a conversation and you're not trying to fix. That's another big thing. Your goal isn't to fix the other person when they have an issue. It's to hold the space so they can figure it out on their own. You can sort of interject with things you think might be where it's stemming from or things in the root. That's one of the things we like to do as shadow work when we get triggered, is when one of us is going through it, it's like, well, where is this really coming from? I'm irritated right now, but I don't think I'm irritated with you. I think I'm irritated from something from my past coming up. And then being able to work through that, it's amazing the healing work that does. You know, I heard this quote back when I was going through the start of my healing that really resonated. And it's like, relationship trauma can be so damaging to people. And you need to do a lot of healing work to recover from a lot of unhealthy relationships. But you also need relationships to heal from relationship trauma, because that's how you build that security. That's how you build that trust, that vulnerability. Because independence is great. It's necessary. But there's hyper independence where you end up not allowing that person to be a part of your life.
Yeah. And this is relevant in both romantic and platonic relationships. Your friendships can have these same issues and need these same communication skills and can do the same amount of healing. So whether or not you're in a romantic relationship, friendships, coworkers, community members can also be just as healing.
Yeah. Well, I think another really important point on that is I'm a believer in you can never meet anyone deeper than they've met themselves. And prior to me going on this healing journey, I had deep connections because I was good at being vulnerable, but I also hid all my struggles, all my weaknesses, all my shame, all the things that I felt were flaws within me. I tried to cover up, mask, and keep away from the world. And by doing so, I never allowed anyone to actually get to know me. I let people get to meet versions of me. And I had a different version for different settings. You know, if I was with my friends, I had that cool guy attitude. If I was going on dates, I had that confident attitude where I was trying to make an impression. Or if I'm at work, I'm being as diligent as I can in the work I'm doing and accommodating. And when you start doing this work, you start learning how to be consistent across all spheres of your life. Because it's so important, especially in your romantic and platonic relationships. Because those are the people who are going to be there when you go through hard times. You know, I've seen people go through grief and it destroy them because they're too afraid to show any weakness. They hide it all inside and it destroys them from the inside out. Vulnerability is so important to allow people to sort of pick us up when we're down. There's that whole mantra of you can't always be 50-50. Sometimes I'm only going to have 20% to give, and I'll need you to pick up 80, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Well, same goes for friendships. If you don't allow people to pick up that other percentage, you're going to burn out.
Well, and I think that is a good segue, because another thing that can build up resentment in relationships is when you don't speak those expectations. When you expect the other person to read your mind or to intuit that you're at 20% today, instead of saying, hey, I'm not feeling great today. I need to lie in bed and not do the dishes today. Can you pick up the slack for me?
Yeah. Oh, it's one of my favorite quotes, Justin Tommy, when I first started my training with him, was unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. And that hit home so hard because of that 7-year relationship I was in. I kept thinking she was eventually going to show up for me. She was going to step it up. She was going to see that I was struggling. And it was just a quiet festering of resentment that just grew and grew and grew. And I'm looking at you empaths out there, or codependents. When you think you can just take the high road every time in your personal relationships, and I'm a big fan of taking the high road, but you take the high road with the guy who cuts you off in traffic, the angry lady at the grocery store, your coworker who's having a bad day. But in your personal relationships, if there's a problem, you have to address it. Because if you don't, it will only get worse. One of the hardest lessons I've learned with psychology, and this is true for all of us, myself included, we teach people how to treat us. And everyone will take the most they can in any given relationship by instinct. So the more you offer, the more you give, the more people will take. And that's not a bad thing, but it's learning to have those boundaries. It's learning to communicate where your lines are. And it's learning to ask for what you need in return.
And this requires a lot of self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-confidence, knowing that even if I make an ask in a relationship and the other person says no, says that's absolutely ridiculous and I'm going to leave now, we're not in a relationship anymore, then I will still be okay within myself. And that's one of the most difficult and most important things to cultivate, because you can't let your inner state rely on others. It has to be internal. You have to have that like internal strength and security. And that's something that I think a lot of us need to cultivate. And that's something that's really helped me in my relationships.
You know, Jim Rohn, one of my favorite teachers out there, he had a line that has stuck with me ever since I've heard it. And it's, let me work on me for you, and you work on you for me.
Yeah.
It's, let's grow our autonomy while also being a team. And I think that is a thing that I very much struggled with in the past, is I very much fused to my relationships. And it was hard to really know where my partner ended and I began. And that can be a really difficult place to operate from, especially when you're in a toxic relationship. Because when you have those push-pull dynamics where you have chaos going on all the time, when you never know what's going to happen next, you end up molding yourself around the other person so that you don't send them into a mood, or you don't trigger their insecurities. Not that you think about it like that. It's, I don't want to deal with fire and brimstone today.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like when it comes down to communication, we never really learned how to communicate growing up. We learned how to survive conversations. We learned how to get by and do what we had to get by. But this is one of those things, as Justin is so fond of saying, once you know better, do better. And practice, 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 because the more you cultivate these skills, the more you work with people you trust to develop communication skills, the more it's going to ripple into your life. So I think the next phase from this is really looking at how these tendencies show up in relationships. So we kind of touch base on mind reading, but I really want to focus on is triggers, because this is something that I think everyone needs awareness on. Because more often than not, when there's an argument in a relationship, when you're upset in a relationship, don't get me wrong, people do stupid shit. Like, that is a thing. But often it's something from our past that is hitting us. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember when we first moved in together and we went grocery shopping, and we both triggered each other. Because I was scanning groceries and you were putting them in the bag, and you were so frustrated with me because I wasn't doing it by a size, which makes sense now that we've gone through it. But I'm like,
my own system.
And when you told me the way you approached it made me have my past flare up, where I felt like I was being talked to like a child or like I was incompetent. And you felt like I was just bulldozing through what you needed. And we both got triggered, and we were both a little frustrated with each other. And instead of letting that frustration go over, we both got to the car. We both were like, hey, we're a little triggered right now. Let's sit with this for a second. What's really coming up right here? Mm-hmm. And we had to talk through it. But man, triggers are so insidious, because unless you are self-aware enough to know what triggers you and the things from your past that come up and show their heads, you think that's just what's going on. That your emotions hijack you. And that's why you get angry in relationships. Or that's why you shut down in relationships. You don't notice the pattern, and so instead it's just your response comes online and you get in sync with it.
Well, you start telling yourself a story, right?
Yep.
You were telling the story of Allison's treating me like a child. I was telling the story of Michael's not listening to me. And it's once you get past that and recognize, oh, I'm just telling myself a story. I don't know that this is true. This is just what my brain is telling me. And then you get down into, okay, what am I actually feeling? What am I feeling in my body? What emotions are coming up? And then from there you can go down into, and where does this really come from? But that first step is recognizing, like, I'm telling myself a story. I say that in my own brain all the time, because I'll be telling myself little stories about people or things or the cat or you or whatever. And just in my brain I'm going, I don't know that that's true. I'm telling myself a story. and I'm going to take that and throw that in the garbage in my brain.
We need to do a whole episode on that because there is so much truth to that, and that is what it is. It is people believe the stories their minds tell them because they think they're their minds. Yeah, no, I see it, especially with people who are not emotionally intelligent, for a nice way to phrase it. It's this constant, just the minute that gets kicked on, yeah, it's this, what do I believe this is saying about me? Yeah. Oh, that's good. Preach. I think another thing that starts to happen as these stories start to cultivate, as you start to sit in that silence, you start to let things fester, things start getting out of hand, is, you start having passive aggressive comments. Not you, like people in general.
One does.
These relationships. Or you have the people who are just overtly aggressive. You fall on one side or the other. If you're on the side of passivity, passive aggressiveness is what comes out, and small criticisms. And
I think it becomes passive aggressive because that feels safer than outright confrontation.
Yeah.
It feels safer to just make snide comments or go, well, I wouldn't do it like that. Or
you start withholding love. You
slamming
start
things.
withholding affection.
Yeah.
You start withholding information of what's going on in your day.
You don't feel safe, so you start keeping yourself away from the other person. I no longer feel safe, so I'm not going to tell you about this thing because that's not safe. And I'm not going to be affectionate because that's not safe. Vulnerability doesn't feel safe anymore.
Yeah. And as time goes on, it's just people drift apart. And it's like two strangers living in a house, having parallel lives going on, but
you become roommates.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see this in so many freaking relationships. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. And a lot of the times it's we fall in love with the potential of people. We never realize if this person never changes, am I going to be okay with this?
I'm going to be a little repetitive, but you fall in love with the story you tell yourself. It's true. It's the fantasy you build up. Instead of the reality of we're all gross people who make mistakes and
that damn pedestal.
Yeah, and it's fun to fantasize about people. It's so much fun. But it's not fun when you're faced with that reality and that cognitive dissonance.
Well, that's why limerence is so dangerous, is because when you have someone just far enough out of reach that you are infatuated with, the space between the actual connection and who that person is becomes so distorted. Mm-hmm. I'm fond of saying we have a relationship with two people with anyone we know, and it's who they are and who they are in our minds. And man, that dissociation can truly create a person that doesn't even exist.
Well, who they are in your mind tells you more about yourself than about them.
Yes.
Because you can be in a relationship with a very kind person, but if you are not kind to yourself, them in your head is going to be mean to you. The stories you tell are going to be like, oh my God, they hate me. Or just very cruel things. That is not true.
Yeah. Man, you could get me on a whole tangent there with projection because that is one of the most dangerous things I see happening all over in society. People have their insecurities, they don't address them, and they just project them on everyone else, saying that is how they feel about me because they don't want to admit that's how they feel about themselves. And as this drift happens, as people start to separate, these maladaptive coping mechanisms come in, whether it's the rejection, the sly comments, whether it's neglect or just being disinterested. We find these weird ways to try to get attention when all it does is drive that divide further. And underneath all of it is just someone who needs to feel safe enough to be honest. Because that's really what it is something happened in the relationship where trust was broken and there wasn't a mending that happened. And this type of distorted coping mechanism feels safer than genuine honesty. And again, this doesn't have to be just from this relationship. It could have been from your relationship with your parents, your first relationship, friendships. It's all about where did we learn the coping skills that we embody today?
Where did we learn that we're not safe?
This is a good conversation.
Always is.
So let's dive into what people can do. If this is resonating with you, if you are feeling the struggle that this is, because it is so common out there, there are things you can do to start making shifts in your relationship that can start building this foundation. No relationship is beyond repair. One of the biggest things I learned is that love isn't a feeling, it's a choice. And when we start to realize that, it brings a whole new light to love, because so many people chase that feeling. And I don't care how strong of a feeling you get with somebody, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, it's going to fade. The hormones are going to come down, it's going to get normalized. And if you're someone who chases the feeling, you're going to feel like the relationship got boring or that you need excitement again. And it's this chasing of fulfillment that you'll never find, because it'll always just be waves of new high, then common ground. So if right now you're having issues in your relationship where you guys are struggling with communication, one of the best things you can do is try to approach communication in a new light. Vulnerability is one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal, because we all crave vulnerability. And when we get into these toxic dynamics, it becomes difficult for us to open up, and same with the other person. So when you lead with vulnerability and not a verdict, I felt this way, instead of you always fuck up. It's finding a way to not make it where they're the problem, but this is what's going on inside of you. People are much more responsive and wanting to hear when it's presented that way, instead of blame or judgment.
I do want to add the caveat that this really only works if all parties want to change. Otherwise, if you're in a truly abusive relationship, vulnerability can be turned against you.
Yes.
So be safe.
And it is important to evaluate your relationships, because when you get on this healing path, and I've been seeing this with so many people as I've been working with people, is it's great when you find someone and you see their potential again. And even if they want to do the work, if they're not doing the work for themselves, they're doing it for you, that's a clear sign they're probably not going to be able to maintain change. We can only change when we feel the calling within ourselves, that we know we need to become different people. And that can be a messy process, as we all know. It can be something that happens incrementally with 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But they have to want it for themselves. And if you're the person in the relationship who's constantly trying to improve, constantly trying to make things better in the relationship, there's a very high chance that you're not the problem in the relationship.
But yes, using I statements
yes,
is great, because it makes it so that the other person is not put on the defensive. Instead of hearing, you're so annoying or you're so terrible, it's, hey, I feel this way when this thing happens. Because it becomes more about the impact, not the attention.
Well said. Well said. And when it comes to these type of changes, when something bugs us within a relationship, often the solution isn't that it's just going to go away. It will require compromise. It'll require discussion and patience. I remember one of the things when we moved in together is I kind of would just take my laundry off and put it on the floor next to the bed. And we had the laundry basket in the closet, but out of sight, out of mind. It was something that I struggled with. And so it's when we sat down and talked about it, she's like, I really don't like that you leave your clothes on the ground. It's like, I don't think I'm going to be able to really consciously remember to always put it in there. And we came up with the solution, get a basket that goes under the bed. So when I take my clothes off, I just throw it in this basket, tuck it under the bed. She doesn't have the mess, and I have a place where I see the basket and I know what I'm doing. Because we got to work with each other's different learning skills, our different preferences and ways we interact with the world.
Yeah. Especially if you're people who are kind of stuck in your ways, or like Michael said, when something is out of sight for him, he's not gonna notice it. And we've both accepted that we're not perfect people. We're both very aware of our own quirks.
Yeah. Well said.
Is how I will put those. And so, we find ways to work together. Or, I'm a very, very tidy, organized, sometimes obnoxiously so about it. But then you have your spaces, like your desk, where I'm I'm not gonna clean that up. I'm not gonna tidy that. That's your space. You can do what you please. And I'll go be ridiculous about my desk and my space and keep it nice and tidy and organized and color-coded.
No, it's amazing how well, like, that was one of my biggest concerns moving in was, how is this gonna be? I'm a hoarder. I've gotten better. And I thrive in chaos. And yeah, you're very orderly. Like, her organization is something that is inhuman. I love it about her. She brings the structure, I bring the play.
But yeah, we found good ways to compromise or to live with the fact that nothing's ever going to be the way we want it, and that's okay.
Another important thing is when you have this type of communication going on, it's making sure that you're separating, taking the time beforehand to separate what is trigger, what is actually the issue going on. Because, again, triggers will reside in a lot of this stuff, but there is usually something that needs addressed. And when you can separate the trigger from the actual issue, you can de-escalate the emotions behind it, and you can have a much more civil conversation and a much more realistic approach to when you bring it up.
Well, sometimes that's what we talked about earlier, the importance of identifying that something is a trigger. Because once you name it, you can kind of peel it away from what's going on. And it's like peeling away like a sticker over a camera lens, right? You like, oh, I can see clearly. I can see what's actually happening now because I've taken off this lens of my trigger and being able to notice it. Or even working through some of the emotions. And we do this a lot where I will say, oh, hey, I'm having big feelings about something. I'm going to go take 15 minutes or however long I need and go like sit on my own and meditate or journal or, angry clean or something. Process the emotion so that I can come back and it's not as escalated and it doesn't feel as intense. And I can come back clearer and more level-headed and a little more objective.
Well, I think when we have these moments where we need to have these discussions, it's really important that both you and your partner are on the same page of holding that space where it's listening to understand and not to respond, not to have the next say or to have that defense mechanism or to fix it. Again, that was my biggest one. I still struggle with it where I'm like, I see what's going on. Let me try to give you all the solutions you could try to incorporate. It's like, no, you
and
just
I'm
need
like,
to hear right now.
I just need to vent.
But it's really important to learn how to listen. I'd say it's almost more important than learning how to convey your messages. Because only in listening can you understand the other person's point of view or what's actually going on with them. It's through this communication of holding that space, allowing yourself to not be judgmental or defensive, and just allow it to be a conversation.
Yeah, it's active listening.
Yes.
It's asking questions.
Yeah, get curious about it.
You're feeling this thing. Can you tell me more about it? I ask a lot, like, where do you feel this in your body? To, like, get a little more of a somatic experience. Or, oh, tell me more about this. It's curiosity. That's a great word for it. That's the best way to approach it. Because when you're curious, when you've turned on your curious brain, put on your curiosity cap, you can't be defensive or judgmental. Those two just don't really work together.
Well, I mean, I know when you go through your big feelings, it's like I love to ask questions about just like, what is this bringing up for you? Is it since I know you so well, I'll bring up certain parts of your past. Like, could it be associated with this? And we'll start digging into the roots of the shadow and be like, whoa, this is a whole new expression that we didn't even notice until just now.
Yeah. And sometimes, for me, especially for your partner, that can also pull them out of the big feelings. Start, asking questions, then I start thinking about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that is where that comes from. And I get curious too. So I become less defensive and judgmental.
Yeah.
So it can really work for both of you.
Beautifully said. And I think another really important part when it comes to your relationship, a lot of people have relationships that are like, it's almost like transactional. Mm-hmm. It's all business. And I think a lot of people lose sight of their partner being their best friend. And that's something we very much keep alive in our relationship. We have date days every week. We're cutting down on money, so now it's like we'll go and have a picnic. Or we'll go to free day at the art museum. Or we'll go have a nice walk. We find ways to spend quality time. We'll have intentional nights where we shut off our technology and paint, or just have lo-fi in the background while we talk or build models or whatever. And it's important that there's nothing more important to me in this relationship than making sure you know how important you are to me and how the quality time we get.
Rebecca, yeah.
I love you.
Love you.
This is disgusting.
A little bit.
We're on camera.
That's okay. Well, and you also have to remember that you also have to be people in your relationship and have fun and play a little bit. It's not all business and budgets and shadow work. Don't be so serious about it all.
Well, I think one thing, too, is when you start adding play into your relationship, you start having things like we cuddle every day after work. The first thing we do, even at the podcasting, I'm like, we're going to be 10 minutes late. I need cuddles. But it's something that helps us regulate our nervous systems, get to baseline. You know, we have these certain rituals that we incorporate in our relationship that keep the foundation of us protecting one another's peace and creating the safe environment where if we're drained for the day, we can just collapse right there and we know the partner's going to be there to touch one another.
Well, and it reminds us that we're on the same team. That when there is conflict, it's not you versus me. It's us working together as a team to address something in our relationship.
Yeah, it's never should I stay or should I go? It's where do we go from here?
Yeah.
You're distracted. So when it comes down to it, you start building these practices. You know, there's some key insights you can do to really start embodying this in your relationship. As you start transitioning into the practices and start living this as your normal life. You know, again, love is a daily choice. You know, making sure we practice gratitude every day, every little thing. We let each other know, like, I appreciate you did this morning. Or, hey, I really appreciated those extra cuddles we got. Yeah. Or,
thanks for making my lunch.
Yeah. But it's just that constant daily acts of love and devotion. And it doesn't have to be anything big. You know, sometimes I'll just write a quick note on a sticky note and stick it in her purse for her to find later. So when you look at relationships, there's always a masculine and a feminine, more often than not. And this isn't gender specific, but there are specific needs that are required when it comes to these dynamics in relationships.
And sometimes it's not always one person is always the masculine and one person is always the feminine. Like, it can be a little bit of a dance.
I think especially in cat and mouse relationships, where there's a lot of push-pull, it very much shifts. Because when the feminine energy is at the forefront, what the feminine energy needs is it needs to feel safe, most importantly. Safety is what creates the ability to be vulnerable. And then through that vulnerability, it allows expansion. You know, I always look at feminine energy as the water being poured into the pot. The masculine energy is the pot that holds the water. Larger the space you can hold, the more you allow the feminine to bring curiosity and creativity and expansion, emotional truth, empathy, and just love into the relationship and beauty. And the masculine, what it needs more than anything is it needs to be acknowledged, respected, valued. You know, I think that is one of the things men struggle with most when they have the relationships that start pulling apart, and what makes them the most distant is they no longer feel like they are appreciated. And it makes them want to do less because they don't feel that appreciation. And they have this need to provide. And when they don't feel like they're providing, it creates chaos inside them. Mm-hmm. And that's why the nurturing energy of the feminine is so important to the masculine, is because it fills that spirit up. You have brought so much abundance into my life just through the way you love me, the way you've empowered me to do these 100-hour weeks, the way you supported me through all these hard times and busy times when I don't have a lot of energy or I got so much going on. You're always right there, and that has been a godsend to my growth and development and to what I'm creating. And I know I've seen it with you, where me allowing to have that safe space, a place for you to be open and vulnerable, for you to communicate with me and to explore yourself with me, has allowed you to flourish in your art, in your work, in who you are as a person, discovering who that is. And I think it's important to acknowledge, again, this isn't us melding together and being the source of happiness for each other. But it is being independent while also being a true team.
We're living parallel lives that are, next to each other. But we are still our own autonomous individuals.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It is.
Do you have any closing thoughts you want to give our audience before I jump into our exercises?
This doesn't happen through, as with most healing, it's not about like big leaps or grand gestures or, overwhelming emotional experiences. It's about daily consistency. And consistency doesn't mean the same every day, but it means just showing up every day and remembering that every day is a new start in your relationship. So if one day you both go to bed just feeling terrible, you're both irritable as anything, you wake up and hey, it's a new day. We can start afresh. I'm sorry about last night. But just showing up with that consistency, both for your partner and for yourself, showing that you are choosing honesty and vulnerability and presence.
And curiosity. Well, I think another important note, and I think a lot of relationships, one of the things that causes the degrading that I didn't think to bring up earlier, is a genuine interest in your partner's life and what they're into. You're into a lot of things that I'm not as big into. But you bet your ass I'm going to love when you tell me about it. I'm going to be engaged. I'm going to ask questions. It may not be a hobby I pick up or something I dive into, but I get curious with it.
Or even my job.
Yeah.
You don't know everything about my field, but I can talk to you about it and you ask questions and I can come home and be like, oh my God, this person did this thing.
Yeah, and it's reciprocal. You do the same for me. Like, I tell you about my games and my anime, and you're like, that's cool. Like, tell me more.
I love that you're passionate about something.
I'll take it.
That's the most important thing to me.
I love you.
I love you.
So, for exercises today, I got 2 of them for you. But the first one is something that we practiced because we both struggled with communication in the beginning, just from our past and we've gone through. And this is something, if communication is something you struggle with in your relationship, this is a game changer. Get a notebook, a journal.
You don't have to paint it, but I'm just extra.
And just fill it out. If something's going on, you don't have the words for it, write it out and give it to your partner to read. I'll tuck it under her pillow, or she'll leave it on the bed when I get home and I'll see it and I'll know I'll be able to read it, process it, figure out what the best approach is for it as far as like, does she need comfort right now or what's really going on? And it's just a great way to start building those communication skills. Like, we haven't written in this in a long time.
And it doesn't have to be about issues. I think we've written notes when one of us was on a trip. And we just wrote, like, hey, I really miss you. And I'm going to leave this for you when you come home.
Just because it's adorable.
But especially if you're someone who likes to find the perfect words to express something, sometimes writing it out is easier. Or if you're not comfortable with vulnerability yet, if it still feels really icky, or if maybe it's a topic that you haven't felt safe talking about. Maybe it's really emotionally charged. Or it's just something that still scares you, you can write it out and then give it to your partner and not look while they read it.
It's stressful, but it's a good way to get out everything you want to without locking up, freezing, or...
Yeah, and eventually for us it's become, we practiced, and now we're much more comfortable just, hey, I'm having emotions, I'm having feelings, I'm having thoughts about something. Just bringing it up. You can also just keep writing. You don't have to get to a point where you can verbally do it. It's just come naturally for us, I think.
Yeah, because it's just grown those muscles for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been able to show that space more and more, and it's created this trust, this intuitive trust, where it flows naturally.
And it can create some trust within yourself, too, knowing that the more you express yourself and it's received, thank you, with kindness and generosity, the safer you feel in yourself too. Because you start knowing how to approach yourself. You start saying, oh, okay, so when I'm having big feelings, I'm going to approach myself this way. And
it ripples out into your
Yeah.
entire life. So one thing I'm going to include in this episode in the show notes, I will leave a link below. I have been building a couples journal. So it's very much in the beta stages, but it's something I'm developing to help couples build communication. And I would love for you to download it, try it, give me feedback, let me know what you think of it, and see if it helps you guys in your communication with your relationships. Because often communication is the one missing ingredient that can bring the garden back to life. Now, for another exercise I got for you, sometime in the next 48 hours, find a quiet moment with your partner, no phones, no agenda, and just ask one another, what is one thing that you need more from me? And then also, what is one thing you appreciate about me? Having this daily practice where you can sort of just bounce back and forth. I know it's probably once every other month I'll ask you. It's like, what are 3 things I could do better in this relationship or around the house?
Check in regularly.
Yeah. And what are 3 things I'm doing really well? What are you really liking that I'm doing?
Yes, always balance the constructive feedback with some praise as well. And if it might be more difficult for you to come up with those on your own, you can always ask your tarot cards too.
Yeah. And the important thing to know about this isn't about fixing these problems. It's not about responding. It's not about defending. It's just about learning to listen and communicate. Mm-hmm. If it opens into a bigger conversation, let it. If it just needs to be said, that's enough. But that's all you need to do.
Like we said before, you can, take it and just kind of mull it over and sit with it for a little bit. And then if you want to move forward with the change or taking action or, hey, let's find a compromise, then you can.
For our affirmations today, I am safe enough to say what I actually feel. My needs are not a burden. They are an invitation to be known. I can hold space for my partner without losing myself. Vulnerability is how I build the relationship I want. We are on the same team, even when it's hard. And for our journaling prompts today, ask yourself, what do you most need your partner to understand about you that you've never fully said out loud? And what's stopping you from saying it? Now, think about a recurring conflict in your relationship. Underneath the surface argument, what's the real need that's not getting met? And for our last one, what does it look like when you're at your best in your relationship? And what would have to shift for that version of you to show up more consistently? Thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you got a lot out of this episode. So glad Allison got to join me. Justin's going through it today, so I'm glad I was able to jump in and have a partner to do so with me. I'm telling you, a healthy relationship, there is nothing better. Nothing that'll help you grow faster either. With love and gratitude, Adlucium. Follow us on the socials. Check out the best website ever, newashton.com. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're there. We'll see you there. Adlucium.
Or stop.